Hello, welcome back to my channel Literati. I'm Dr. Seema Sinha. Please like and subscribe to my channel if you find the content useful and the insights which I try to update and I try to analyze, I try to present useful for you because I try to bring an original insight into these great masterpieces or these works of literature. Today I will continue with my analysis of the Wasteland. Today I will go on or move to the second part. The Burial of the Dead has already been analyzed by me, and now we come to the second part because this entire epic, this great epic, is in 5 parts. Each part is condensed and each part has numerous ideas and complexities of thought, of experience, of emotions, of situations, of feelings to present to the reader. This second part is called a game of chess. Let us first begin by understanding the significance of the title, A Game of Chess, because like in the first part, The Burial of the Dead, the heading also has a deep meaning and it sort of throws light or it tries to present the undercurrents or the underlying ideas. A Game of Chess is an allusion to a Jacobean play by Thomas Middleton, the great Jacobean dramatist. His final play, this play gained quite a lot of notorious fame and it was performed only for 9 times before being banned. The reason it was banned was because it portrayed the royal court, which was not allowed. Thomas Middleton's final play, this was his final play. He was tried and he was persecuted, but he was acquitted also. This play, like all Jacobean plays, has disturbing content, sexual, political intrigues. It is very satirical. The background of this play was the situation of the court at this period, during this period. This play was performed in 1624. The reason was James I arranging his son Charles I marriage to the Spanish Princess Infanta Maria. This marriage was unacceptable to the English people. In fact, James I had risked the loyalty of his people by arranging this marriage. The reasons for this marriage were money and power, because along with Infanta Maria came a huge dowry. And it is a political satire and a religious satire as well, because it questions the marriage between a Protestant prince and a Catholic princess. As we know, England by this time was strongly Protestant, and the fact that Spain was Catholic, and this marriage it did not gain the favor of the English people. The play is performed in the form of genuine chess moves with 2 opposing parties. One are the white king and the queen and their court, and the other part opposed to them are the black chess pieces, which are supposed to represent the Spanish Catholic court. The white chess pieces, the actors and the actresses dressed as the actors, there were no actresses at that time, dressed in white, were supposed to represent James I and his court. And the black chess pieces were, like I said, the Spanish court, the Catholics, the Jesuits, who were presented as some kind of sexual predators. The Spanish princess or the queen was displayed as an immoral person, and the allusions were very, very obvious. The reason this play was banned was that it represented the royal court of James I, but it had a deep satirical and religious and political content. The themes were religion and politics, which were the reason why this play itself was created or presented, to show this marriage negotiation between the Protestant English royalty and the Catholic Spanish royalty as something which was based on greed and for money and for power. So the allusion, right, or the title or the heading of A Game of Chess, which, or the second part, itself portrays a kind of a religious and sexual and political undercurrent. The lines begin again in the omnipotent voice of the poet. Lines from line 77 to around line 106, we hear the voice of the poet, and then it merges into the voices which come from different directions. And I must emphasize that in this particular part, it seems to be centered on the consciousness of women. Women from different places, different settings, different situations, different time periods, different backgrounds, from the world of legends, from the world of Shakespearean drama, to transposed into the modern world, and ending with a picture of women in a very sordid situation. So this particular part, A Game of Chess, this section of the Wasteland, it begins and it ends with two very concrete pictures of definite settings. In between, we have lines which seem like echoes, but there's no doubt about it that they are in all probability voices of women, but they seem like echoes which meander, which repeat, or which come from different directions, which seem to be coming from the wilderness. So it begins and it ends with two concrete pictures with these disjointed lines in between. T.S.Eliot's poem or his writing seems as if it does not have any pattern. In fact, it is chaotic. But if we view it with a lot of concentration, and if we analyze it closely, we will see that there are definite links, or there is a definite sense of continuity. In the first part also, the Burial of the Dead, the section begins with the idea of death actually transitioning into something beautiful, something meaningful, something immortal. And it is juxtaposed against the closing of the section, where the last stanza depicts the doomed people in a grey world, like damned souls, and the voice referring to the corpse or to the violence and the senseless deaths of World War I, and the corpse and the dead bodies, which will not be resurrected into something beautiful. So the contrast between the first part and the second part is very obvious. In the first part, memories and desires come together. What is memory is not dead, but it stirs desire once again. It rekindles itself in life. Jesus Christ's crucifixion ends not in annihilation, but a more meaningful and immortal presence, his resurrection. But in the modern day, as the last part says, there will be no resurrection, but the corpse will be killed by the frost or the wolf, it will not bloom into something else. So we see that every part is a complete whole, which is bound together by the beginning and the end. In this part also, we find that there is a concrete setting in the beginning lines, the opening lines, and a concrete setting at the close of this section. Now from line 77 to lines 106, we hear the voice of an omnipotent voice, the voice of the poet, the monologue, which then merges into other voices. This part is the description of a very ornate setting with priceless objects of art, full of splendor, full of magnificence, full of sculpted, lifeless pieces, beautiful but static. There is an air of stillness. There is an air of claustrophobia. There is a feeling of complete absence of movement. Everything is still, everything is static. There is no movement. In other words, there is death in life. The first lines make an allusion to Shakespeare's play Antony and Cleopatra, and the image of a woman sitting in great regal majesty on an ornate throne, surrounded by riches, surrounded by magnificence, surrounded by priceless objects of art, carved, beautifully sculpted. The cupids, the glass-top table, the soft glow of the jewels, the priceless candelabra with 7 branches, the candles lit, their flames burning steadily, throwing patterns on the wall, highlighting the loveliness of all the inanimate objects in the room, which are magnificent, which are beautiful, which are priceless. There is an air of luxury, but it is very closed. There is a death-like stillness. There is no movement. It is all still. It is frozen in time. There is a presence, but there is no movement. This is death in life, but the glow of the jewels, the extraordinary and priceless objects of art, the sculptures, the glass-top table, everything is perfect, everything is beautiful, but there is no movement. There is a complete stillness. There does not seem to be any life. It is static, it is claustrophobic, it is closed, it is lifeless. It is a picture of death in life. There is a sense of unease. There seems to be a hidden menace. This is not a scene of tranquility. There is a hidden quality which makes one feel uneasy. And this hint, or this almost menacing element or feeling, comes in with the use of words like strange synthetic perfumes, troubled, confused, odors, which all have negative connotations. When the jewels which glow softly, when the perfumes in the bottles seem to send their kind of fragrance in the room, it is overpowering, it is strange, it is synthetic, it is troubled. It is not a scene of peace and tranquility. The stillness of the room is undisturbed. It is absolutely still. It is completely lifeless. The only silent or sudden or unexpected or just a small gust which comes in of breeze from some hidden corners, it makes the steadily burning flames of the candles move. And as they move, they highlight the carved ceilings. They throw light on the carvings on the wall, the paintings. The painting is again of stillness, of lifelessness, of something which is frozen in time. And it says, the painting which the moving candles or the light of the candles highlights or suddenly brings into focus is that of a sad dolphin. The use of the word sad. It emphasizes the stillness, the lifelessness, the complete absence of life. It is a world of emptiness. There is no life. There is death in life. There is nothing which can create a feeling of possibility. Because everything is still, everything is without any movement. It is a beautiful setting, but it is closed, it is claustrophobic, it does not seem to offer any comfort or any solace. It only highlights or accentuates or emphasizes the absolute and complete lifelessness of the room filled with magnificence, which is beautiful but lifeless. So there is death in life, there is no movement. And then a transition to the second idea as a complete contrast to death and life, that is of life in death. And for this, the poet again goes back to the world of myths, the world of legends. As the room or as the readers are taken to a tour of this enclosed room, looking at the different objects of art, the priceless sculptures, the cupids, the magnificent candelabra, the beautifully lacquered ceiling, the jewels, the synthetic perfumes, the troubled air, which is so still without any movement, and the painting of the dolphin frozen in time without any movement, the world transitions into, the room transitions into another world. It is like looking in through a window into another scene. And this is the world of legends which the poet takes us to. because as the eyes or the view shifts to a tapestry hanging on the wall over the mantelpiece, it defines or it brings to life the legend of Philomela. And this is from Ovid's, that great Roman poet, that great magnum opus, Metamorphosis, which had been created or which is a part of classical literature, that great Latin poem by Ovid. It is a long narrative poem and it has around 250 myths. It recreates the legions. It has 15 books and around 11,995 lines. So it is a monumental work. It creates a mythical history of the world. The legend of Philomel is a part of the section called Metamorphosis. Now, metamorphosis itself means a transition. It means a transformation. So with the view of this tapestry hanging on the wall, this room is transformed into that ancient world where there was life and death. When death did not mean annihilation, but it meant a transformation into something everlasting, something beautiful. Now, this legend of Philomel is one of the legends from Ovid's Metamorphosis, and it talks about a revenge. It is a story of revenge. The revenge which is taken on the barbarous king, T.S.Eliot, by Philomel and her sister Procene. Philomel was raped and she was mutilated by T.S.Eliot. Her tongue was cut off, and so she could not talk about the way she had been ravished by T.S., who was her brother-in-law, married to her sister Procene. This, because she could not speak about it, she wove in a tapestry. When her sister Procene found out about it, she decided to take revenge on her husband. And she went to a savage form of revenge because she killed her own son and she presented it as him, or the son she had killed, as a cooked dish to her husband. And after he had eaten it, this was revealed to T.S. by Philomel and her sister Procene. T.S., enraged, tried to kill them, but the gods intervened, and Philomel was transformed into a nightingale. Her sister Procene was transformed into a swallow, and T.S. into the hoopoe or the woodpecker. So this is the legend, and it talks about a kind of revenge which is unimaginable and which is taken by two women, the two sisters. Procene was married to T.S. and Philomel was her sister. The important point in this story or this legend is the transformation of Philomel into a nightingale. She gets back her voice. She fills the desert land, the lifeless world, with her immortal song. And this is the idea of transformation, or with which this part ends, which offers a contrast to the lifeless world, which has been portrayed from lines 77, and which now from lines, we can say lines 98 to 99 and 100 talk about the transformation of Philomel. The lines are: as through a window gave upon the sylvan scene, the change of Philomel by the barbarous king, so rudely forced, yet there the nightingale filled all the desert with her inviolable voice. So from lines 77 to lines 100, we are given this contrast of the two central ideas of life in death and death in life. The first part talks about the complete lifelessness, the complete absence of any enriching experience, of any sustenance, of any possibility of death in life. She sits in a room filled with magnificence, but it is meaningless because there is no possibility. It contrasts with the last part, where the transformation of Philomel is portrayed as a metamorphosis or life in death, when she emerges out of her ravaged self, of her mutilated self, of the way she had been violated, into something meaningful, something beautiful, something inviolable, because it cannot be corrupted. It is immortal and it is perfect. So the first part talks about a perfect setting, a perfect room, beautiful, priceless, magnificent, luxurious, but meaningless. And the second part talks about the transformation, where even in a ravaged situation, even when one is mutilated, one is violated, one can emerge into something more beautiful and more powerful, because a voice becomes indestructible, it becomes inviolate, nothing can destroy it. And it is a picture of life in death. So the two contrasting ideas are again present, and these are the elements which provide a sort of continuity to the entire poem, the entire great epic. Now from lines 103 onwards, suddenly there's a sudden change, or there's almost a change without any warning. The sound or the song of the inviolable song of Philomel changes into a very harsh sound in the modern world. So from the ancient world of legends, we are again transported into the modern world without any warning. And this sound becomes jug, jug to dirty ears. The use of the word dirty, jug, jug, that harsh sounding word or words. This sudden change brings us back to the modern reality. And then there is a description of a menace, a menacing presence, some kind of a threatening impression, something which is not peaceful. And it says, in that room, there were other withered stumps of time, other lifeless carvings, furniture, artifacts, statues, carved faces, which leaned out almost threateningly. And they seemed to enclose or create a feeling of suffocation, a feeling of oppression, a feeling of complete claustrophobia. Now, the jug jug is a reference to the modern day sounds of traffic, of horns, of all kinds of ugliness, because the ears are also dirty. The modern life itself is full of distortion and full of a kind of degradation, which is a complete we can say deterioration of life itself. That is why the use of the word filthy. There is no sustenance. There's nothing to keep our hopes alive. Footsteps shuffled on the stair, under the firelight, under the brush, her hair spread out in fiery points, glowed into words, then would be savagely still. Again that sense of unease. The tired footsteps shuffling on the stairs give us an image or an impression of tiredness, of exhaustion, of a lack of vitality, of the kind of emptiness which does not give any hope or any energy. And then the reference to her, the next or the remaining part are all about women, and we hear women's voices only. So this part in particular, it is centered on women's consciousness, beginning from the presence of a woman sitting on a burnished throne in regal majesty in a room which is full of splendor but empty and devoid of any life. It's a lifeless room, almost suffocating, to the legend of Philomel and her transformation and her revival and her changing into something perfect and something immortal which can never be violated. Then the last part of this long stanza, talking about exhausted footsteps, shuffling, walking up tiredly, and a woman, her neurosis, the sense of mental breakdown. The next parts till we come to lines 139, that is the last section of this, are different in construction. They are all disjointed. We hear voices, but they seem to be coming from different directions. They are like echoes. They sound again and again. They repeat upon themselves. They seem to be meaningless. They meander. They are questions, but there are no answers. The voices seem to ask the same question repeatedly. These are voices which come from the wildernesses, but all of them emphasize the emptiness and the boredom of life, especially the last section, when the question is, or the depiction is, of a routine, a meaningless routine to be followed, boredom, a sense of emptiness, a kind of feeling of futility. And we hear the voice of the woman saying, "My nerves are bad tonight. Yes, bad. Stay with me. Speak to me. Why do you never speak? Speak. What are you thinking of? What thinking? What? I never know what you are thinking. Think." This obsessive questioning, this repetition, it points to a kind of a neurotic mental state. Again, that is also one of the calamities of modern experience. There is also a sense of lack of communication, because the questions say, why do you never speak? You never say anything to me. They seem to be at a dead end, like the rat's alley. As the next lines say, I think we are in the rat's alley where the dead men lost their bones. Now, again, like I said, that T.S.Eliot's poems, they seem like a chaotic collection of images, but there are certain links which connect all the different parts together. And these are repetitions of images, repetitions of lines, and certain references which connect the different parts together. This idea of being in a rat's alley, of being at a dead end, which is a kind of feeling which goes with the lines which have just been read out. My nerves are bad tonight. Stay with me. Why do you never speak? And so on. It points out to a complete loss of any meaningful conversation or any communication. The rat's alley or a dead end, it appears again and again. What is that noise? The wind under the door. What is the noise now? What is the wind doing? Nothing. Again, nothing. Do you know nothing? Do you see nothing? Do you remember nothing? The emphasis on the word nothing, which is repeated again and again, it emphasizes or it clearly expresses the total void, the vacuum, the absence of any real feeling, the absence of emotions, the absence of coherence, the absence of meaningfulness in relationships, in conversation, in communion, in communication. I remember those are pearls that were his eyes. Now, if you remember, these lines have been expressed in the first part, the Burial of the Dead, in lines 37 and 48, and particularly lines 48, where the reference to the tempest is made. And again, the same lines come here again, and it provides a link to the first part. So all the parts are not separate. They are connecting points, and these are presented or these are expressed to create a complete whole. Just like in each part, the first, the opening and the last line also sort of enclose whatever is expressed in that particular section. So this line, those are pearls that were his eyes, take us back to the Burial of the Dead, and lines 48 in that section. Are you alive or there is nothing in your head? The question, which seems to be meaningless, which seems to be like an insane question. Like I said, there's a repetition, there's a constant repetition, there's constant going back and forth, repeating the same questions, not finding any answers, pointing out to the vacuum and the void and the lack of emotion and the lack of communication between people who have lost their way in this modern wasteland. And then the lines talk about the Shakespearean rag. It's so elegant, it's so intelligent. And then suddenly another thought, it is almost like the stream of consciousness technique, where you find different thoughts, different impressions come one after the other, seemingly disconnected. But that is the way a person thinks. You know, one thought leads to another, and the same pattern is followed here, where you feel that one thought leads to another. Then we come back to the where we had started from, like those were the pearls that were his eyes, look, and then repeating the lines and so on. So that same thought process, disconnected, disjointed in this part, and the construction of the lines also follow this disjointedness, because the lines are uneven and they seem to point out to a kind of uneasiness. The first part is very dense, and this part up till line the last two stanzas, we can say, are disconnected. They are in different different combinations, and they seem to have a meandering quality about them. They are not as dense as the first part, till we come to the last part, which is again a very concrete setting. The lines say, what shall I do now? What shall I do? I shall rush out as I am and walk the street with my hair down. So what shall we do tomorrow? What shall we ever do? A kind of a very disturbed mental state, a neurotic state, almost bordering on insanity. And the feeling of boredom, the feeling of emptiness. What shall we ever do? The hot water at 10, and if it rains, a closed car at 4. And we shall play a game of chess, pressing lidless eyes and waiting for a knock upon the door. A repetition of the heading, the game of chess, and these words, these lines talk about boredom, talk about empty, meaningless routine, with nothing to look forward to, with a kind of waiting for the knock on the door, was something to happen, like the waiting for Godot, and endless waiting. Waiting for something, waiting for solution, waiting for a meaning, waiting for peace, waiting for happiness, waiting for something which they don't know. This confusion, this uncertainty, this constant sense of anxiety, it exhibits a neurotic state of mind. And like I said, the construction is also disjointed in this part of the poem, A Game of Chess, in this second part. And the lines very definitely say or talk about the boredom of life. Then when we come to the last part, from lines 139 to the end, it takes us to, like I said, another very concrete setting, like the first part of the A Game of Chess. That long stanza also gives you a very definite setting and a very concrete setting and a very dense collection of images, which is almost overpowering. The last part depicts a conversation between two women. And here again, we are in the modern day world. It is again expressive of the sordid and the debased quality of modern life. We hear the voices of women. This part is entirely centered on the consciousness of women from different places, different settings, different times, different backgrounds. These women are sitting in a cheap pub. They are lower class women. And as they talk, a picture of their life emerges, which is depressing, which is sordid, which is unpleasant, which again points out to the absence of any meaning, love, or values in life. Here we hear the voice of a woman who is talking to a younger woman, and she is talking to her continuously in a very reprimanding voice. She is scolding her, and she is telling her certain things which point out to a total lack of sympathy. So even women don't sympathize with each other. In between, there's the intrusion of a loud voice which tells them to hurry up. It is the women who are sitting in a pub, and most probably it's one of those cheap places. These women cannot afford to buy too many drinks. Obviously, the pub owner doesn't want them sitting there too long, occupying a table, or it is time for him to close, or he wants to do business with other people, because these women are obviously not the kind of women who can spend too much. So he keeps barging in the conversation. We hear the voice telling them to hurry up and finish their drinks and go. And this voice is, or this conversation is between two women. The elder woman, the older one, is telling the younger woman, Lil, that her husband is going to abandon her if she does not take care of her appearance. And as they talk, we understand how Lil is physically on the point of breakdown. She has had too many children. She has had abortions. Her health is ruined. She cannot keep up with the demands of her husband. And as a result, the older woman, instead of understanding her, instead of sympathizing with her, scolds her for letting herself look like an ancient woman, though she is only 31 or 32. When Lil's husband got demobbed, I didn't mince my words. I said to her myself, hurry up, please, it's time. That is the sound of the pub owner, the voice of the pub owner. Now, Albert's coming back. Make yourself a bit smart. He'll want to know what you've done with that money he gave you. To get yourself some teeth. He did. I was there. And we have definite names in this section. The younger woman is Lil. Her husband is Albert. We have a direct reference to World War I because, as you remember, this great epic was written in the aftermath of World War I, and this was written in 1922, when the world was trying to forget the shock of World War I, but the effects was very visible, and the intellectual mind was reeling under the shock. And T.S.Eliot presented The Wasteland as a depiction of the disintegration of the modern world, which he could visualize. And this elder woman is telling her that when her husband got back from the war, 4 years, that is World War I, from 1914 to 1918, he was shocked at her appearance, and he gave her some money and said that you get yourself some new teeth. He said, I swear, I can't bear to look at you. And for Albert, again, it is only the physical appearance which matters. He's not concerned about his wife. He just wants a wife who can please him. And the fact that she had had so many children, she has 5 children, she had had an abortion because she had too many pregnancies, that abortion was illegal, and so it has completely devastated her health, and she can barely take care of herself. But these things do not matter, and the sad part is that even this other woman, the older woman, does not sympathize with her. And no more can I said, and think of poor Albert. He's been in the army 4 years. He wants a good time. And in the army 4 years, that is World War I, like I said, from 1914 to 1918. And as the section goes on, this younger woman, Lil, she says that I cannot help it because I've never been the same after having the last abortion. And then I had some pills to bring it off. It means that she took some pills because she was desperate. And obviously, it destroyed her health. The chemist said it would be all right, but I've never been the same. And she says, the chemist convinced me that it would be all right, but I have lost my health. It has destroyed my health. And instead of understanding and instead of comforting her, instead of sympathizing with her, instead of showing her some kindness, a young woman, obviously she does not look old because she wants to look old, because she looks old because she's tired, she's exhausted, her health is destroyed. She cannot take care of herself with 5 young children. And then the last pregnancy, as they say, was a very difficult one. She nearly died, as the other older woman says, without any sympathy, of course. She also says that Albert is going to find someone else. And this total lack of empathy is shocking. It is unbelievable. It again is a statement on the complete absence of human values, of affection, of a woman who cannot even feel for another woman. And the relationship between a husband and wife, Albert and his wife Lil, which is based on sex only. And this young woman and whose youth is gone, and who is barely 31, but she looks like an old woman. She does not find anyone who understands her or sympathizes with her, not even her friends, not even her husband, who just wants a good time, and the other women seem to support him. So this last part, giving us a definite setting and characters with names. They are not nameless people, but they are of course representations of the sordid scenario or the sordid reality or the debasement or deterioration or complete absent, we can say a kind of immorality, because her husband does not seem to have any emotions for her and he's supported by other women. A woman is, or a wife is just considered a sexual object. She's supposed to look good for her husband and nobody understands her own problems. So this kind of last section is a statement on the abject, sickening, deplorable, and dismal reality in the modern day world. And like I said, this part centers on women's consciousness. This last part is also a commentary or an example of violence, physical in a sense, sexual definitely, emotional, which is practiced on another woman by another woman and even her husband. But this victim here is Lil and Albert, her husband, and the other woman who scolded her for not looking nice, not caring that her health is ruined, are making her a victim of their sadistic words, their lack of emotions for her, the lack of empathy. And we can compare it to that ancient world of legions where Philomel was supported by her own sister, Procene, who took revenge on her own husband for violating her sister. And here in the modern world, even a woman is totally unsympathetic towards another woman. It is a very sad and a very tragic picture. It is very, very depressing. But that is the reality of the modern world. So a game of chess, making allusions to the sexual and political and the religious intrigues of Middleton's play, A Game of Chess, references to Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra, reference to Ovid's Metamorphoses, again recreates or juxtaposes it against the modern day reality. The middle section, which presents a picture of mental breakdown, neurosis, directionless echoes of words, repetitions, questions without any answers, and the last part with a definite setting in the modern day world and the sordid exchange between the women who are sitting there and the absence of any true feeling or any emotions. The two parts, the beginning and the last part, they make this section a complete whole. Like I said, in the Bureau of the Dead also, the first part talks about or it creates the beautiful idea of life in death, talking about crucifixion and resurrection and regeneration, contrasting it or juxtaposing it with the last section where there is going to be no regeneration after World War I because the corpse which has been planted will not bloom again. So there is complete annihilation. There is no possibility, and the people in the modern day world are living dead. There is death and life. Similarly, in this part, a game of chess, the revenge of Procene and Philomel talks about the love and sisterhood between women. And the last part of this section, which portrays very vividly, very clearly, we hear their voices, we hear their names, we listen to them talking, as a contrast to the love and sisterhood between Philomel and her sister Procene. This section offers the sordid reality of the modern day world, where even women don't have any love or any sympathy for each other. So all these ideas come together. If we look at the poem carefully, we do find underlying connections and links as they bring us on certain lines, certain images. Those were the pearls that were his eyes look from the first part and the second part. They all provide links and a kind of continuity. Those are pearls that were his eyes. This from Shakespeare. It appears in the first section. It appears in this section as well. And as we have talked about other images and other representations, which also provide links between the sections. Thank you. And please like and subscribe to my channel. If you find it useful, please leave your comments. And then after we have moved on to the next section, we will try to see and try to discover new links and new connections, making this entire great epic a complete and unified reading experience, as well as something which makes a very profound statement on life itself. Thank you.